Imagine this. You're at an international industry conference, right?
Ah, the classic high-stress scenario.
Exactly. And you've spent, I don't know, maybe the last 2 years diligently studying Spanish or Japanese or maybe English.
Right.
And you've got the flashcards down. You've listened to all the audiobooks. You feel totally ready.
You're confident.
Right. But then, during the coffee break, a native speaker walks up to you, offers this warm, welcoming smile, extends a hand and says, "Hi, tell me a little bit about yourself."
And panic sets in.
Total panic.
Yeah.
Instantly, your brain just deletes every single word of that language you have ever known.
It's gone. Like someone wiped the hard drive.
Yeah, it is a total catastrophic system failure. You can't remember verbs, you can't remember sentence structure, and honestly, for a split second, you aren't even sure of your own first name.
Which is terrifying.
It really is. So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking a close look at an excerpt from a text called The Art of the Natural English Introduction, and this comes to us from Her Vox Studio.
A really fascinating piece of text.
Yeah, it is. And our mission for you today is to pull this whole phenomenon apart. We're going to deconstruct exactly why introducing yourself in a learned language triggers this massive cognitive freeze. And we'll analyze the specific, 5-part framework this source provides to turn that terrifying wave of panic into a natural, confident human connection.
It's a brilliant piece of text to explore, honestly, because that sensation you just described, that absolute mental blank,
Yeah.
it's so incredibly universal. We've all been there.
Oh, 100%.
You can have a genuinely solid grasp of vocabulary, and you can understand what people are saying perfectly well when you're, just in listening mode.
Right, because listening is passive.
Exactly. But the second the spotlight swings to you and you have to actually produce the language yourself specifically to summarize your own identity, the pressure just short-circuits the entire operation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the source material points out a primary roadblock right out of the gate, and it has to do with this deeply ingrained illusion we all kind of carry around.
The perfection myth.
Yes, it's the illusion that you need, quote-unquote, perfect English to introduce yourself. We hold on to this idea that if we don't have, flawless grammar and a sweeping, elegant vocabulary, we simply shouldn't even open our mouths.
Which is so damaging.
Right.
Right.
It makes me think of trying to run a brand new, incredibly complex video game on a 15-year-old laptop.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, like your brain's RAM, your working
Yeah.
memory is entirely eaten up just trying to recall the basic vocabulary.
Yep.
If you then try to render incredibly complex grammatical structures on top of that, the whole system just freezes and crashes, right?
Completely shuts down.
So are we doing this to ourselves? I mean, is our obsession with perfection the actual mechanism making us sound so unnatural?
That is the exact mechanism at play, and the source explicitly targets this right at the beginning.
What do they say?
Well, the text notes that many language learners actually comprehend English perfectly fine, but they freeze up when speaking because they overthink.
They're trying too hard.
Exactly. They're aiming for an idealized perfection, which naturally, inevitably, leads to hesitation and stumbling.
So what's the fix?
The baseline advice given in this text is all about completely dismantling that perfection myth.
Okay.
To do that, the source outlines a progression that starts with absolute basics. So, step 1 is just starting with your name.
Just your name.
Just your name. And step 2 is saying where you're from. And the examples they provide in the text are deliberately, almost shockingly basic.
Give me an example.
For the first step, the example is just, "Hi, I'm Saffron."
That's it.
That's it. For the second, it's, "I'm from Chicago," or slightly more specifically, "I'm from Chicago, Illinois."
Which is incredibly brief. Like, "Hi, I'm
Right.
Saffron." 5 syllables, boom, done.
Exactly.
It's not, "Greetings, my given name is Saffron, and it is a distinct pleasure to make your acquaintance on this fine morning."
No, nobody actually talks like that anyway. What's fascinating here is the sheer emphasis the text places on keeping sentences short and simple. The underlying psychology behind this is vital for anyone learning a new skill. When your cognitive load is maxed out, as you mentioned with the laptop analogy,
Right.
trying to construct a long, winding sentence is just a recipe for a mental crash. You simply don't need long sentences. The source points out that a clear, confident start is entirely sufficient. It establishes your presence in the room without overwhelming your brain's processing power.
I hear that, but I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's put ourselves in the listener's shoes for a second. If you are learning a language and you're in a high-stakes situation where you really want to make a strong impression,
Like a job interview.
yeah, a job interview or a major networking event with industry leaders,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't you try to use more complex vocabulary right out of the gate to prove your competence?
It feels like you should, right?
Right. Doesn't just saying, "Hi, I'm Saffron," sound a bit unpolished?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe even a little childlike in a corporate environment.
It's a very common fear, definitely. But the data on human interaction actually suggests it's misplaced.
Really?
Yeah. Think about how native speakers actually converse with one another, even in professional settings. They don't speak in highly polished academic essays.
That's true. They use a lot of slang, or at least casual phrasing.
Exactly. They speak in fragments, they use contractions, they rely on simple exchanges. So for you, the listener, giving yourself this internal permission to be simple is utterly transformative.
But does the native speaker actually perceive it that way?
Mm.
If I use basic words, aren't they secretly judging my intelligence?
Usually no, because when you aren't obsessing over whether you use the past perfect continuous tense correctly,
Ugh, grammar.
right, when you drop that worry, you actually free up cognitive resources to focus on the human being standing in front of you.
Oh, I see.
You have the mental bandwidth to smile, to maintain relaxed eye contact, to read their body language.
You can actually be present in the conversation.
Exactly. In any new social or professional environment, interpersonal warmth and clarity of meaning are vastly more impressive and memorable to the person you're speaking with than a grammatically complex, rigidly delivered monologue where you look terrified the whole time.
You know, that reminds me of a time I was at a networking event in Paris.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I'd studied French for years, right?
Okay.
And I had prepared this incredibly elaborate, sophisticated introductory sentence in my head.
I can already see where this is going.
So I walked up to a group, opened my mouth, forgot the third word of my elaborate sentence, and just stood there in agonizing silence for what felt like an eternity.
Oh no, the classic freeze.
It was awful. I ended up just pointing at the cheese board and walking away.
No.
Seriously, if I had just said, "Hi, my name is," it would have been a normal interaction.
That is the perfect example. The rigid expectation you placed on yourself created the failure, not a lack of language skills.
Like, it was totally self-inflicted.
The simplicity the source advocates for instantly removes that pressure.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
So we've poured the foundation, we have our name, and we have our location.
Step 1 and 2.
Right. But if we just stop there, we run into a completely different issue. We've established our basic data, but how do we prevent the introduction from sounding like we are just reading off a census form?
Yes.
Name, Saffron. Location, Chicago, Illinois.
Oh.
Ends of transmission.
Right, you sound like a robot.
Exactly. That brings us to the next phase of the text's framework. We have to move from basic data to human identity. The source introduces step 3, which is talking about what you do, and step 4, which is adding hobbies.
Yes, and the text provides clear examples for this as well.
What do they suggest?
For step 3, it offers phrases like, I'm a student, or I work in an office. Simple.
Okay.
And for step 4, it suggests listing hobbies, like reading books, listening to music, watching movies, or playing sports.
Still very straightforward.
Very. But I want to highlight a very specific warning the source gives right here. It notes that if you only share that basic information, your name, your location, and your job, you can end up sounding, in their words, a bit robotic.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the psychology of that shift from robotic to relatable is profound.
Mm-hmm.
If those basic facts, name, origin, occupation, are like a black and white sketch, just the bare structural outlines of a person,
Yeah.
then the hobbies are the color.
Oh, I like that.
The hobbies are what take this interaction from a flat piece of paper to a real three-dimensional portrait of a human being.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of social psychology, stating hobbies serves as a crucial conversational bridge.
How so?
Well, it's about pattern matching. When you say, I work in an office, the other person might say, oh, me too. But the conversation can easily stall right there.
Right.
For most people, office administration isn't an inherently passionate subject that lights up the brain's reward centers.
Right. Nobody's going to eagerly lean in and say, oh, wow, tell me more about your spreadsheet formatting.
Exactly. But when you add, I enjoy listening to music, or I like watching movies, you are handing the other person an immediate hook.
You're giving them an out.
You are giving them something tangible to grab onto. They can instantly ask, what kind of music? Or have you seen any good movies lately?
Yeah.
It fundamentally transforms the interaction from a monologue where you are just presenting your personal data into a genuine dialogue.
It's an invitation.
Yeah.
You are basically handing them a menu of topics they can choose to engage with.
Yes, a menu is a perfect way to put it.
Like, would you like to discuss the weather in Chicago, the daily grind of office administration, or that new sci-fi movie that just came out?
And almost everyone is going to choose the movie.
Because that's where the joy is.
And that joy brings the humanity back into the exchange. It proves you aren't just a language processing machine generating translated data points. You are a person with interests and passions.
So we have the name, the location, the job, and the hobbies.
4 steps down.
Right. And I think most people, especially if they are nervous, would think, great, introduction over, I survived, now I will slowly back away.
Escape while you can.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But just when the introduction seems perfectly complete from a traditional standpoint, the source introduces a highly counterintuitive 5th step.
Mm.
And honestly, this step completely changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. Step 5 is sharing your goal or reason for learning English.
Yes. And the examples they provide are straightforward, like, I'm learning English to improve my speaking skills, or I want to speak English fluently and confidently.
Okay.
The text specifically claims that this step is what makes the introduction truly complete, because it showcases your purpose and your motivation.
So what does this all mean? I mean, why is it so incredibly powerful to reveal your motivations right away?
It's an interesting psychological play.
Because think about human nature. Most people try to actively hide the fact that they are struggling or that they are a novice at something.
Oh, absolutely.
We want to project mastery. So why put your status as a learner front and center?
This raises an important question about how authentic connection actually happens. Sharing a goal like this acts as a subtle yet incredibly effective display of vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
Yeah. Let's think about what you are actually communicating when you say, I'm learning English to improve my speaking skills. You are openly acknowledging that you are a learner.
Right.
You are actively admitting that you are imperfect and that you are currently in a process of growth.
It's like taking off your armor.
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, I'm not fully polished yet, and I know it.
Precisely. And psychologically, vulnerability is inherently disarming. By admitting you are a learner, you instantly invite the other person's patience and their empathy.
Oh, that makes sense.
You remove the expectation of perfection, not just for yourself, but you lower the stakes for them as well. You reframe the entire interaction.
How so?
Well, it is no longer a performance where you are being silently judged on your syntax. It becomes a shared human experience.
I love that framing. The native speaker suddenly realizes, oh, they are actively working hard at this right now. I shouldn't be critiquing them. I should be supporting them.
Exactly.
It shifts them from a critic into a collaborator.
It completely alters the power dynamic in the best possible way. The tension just evaporates.
So now that we have these 5 isolated pieces, name, origin, occupation, hobbies, goal, how do they actually look and function when they are stitched together in the real world?
Because you can't just list them off.
Right. We don't just want to sound like a robot reading a checklist.
Right.
The source actually provides a full, natural conversation example between 2 individuals, Zayne and Saffron, to demonstrate how this flows.
Yes. Let's look at the anatomy of that conversation in the text. Zayne introduces himself, noting he is from New York and that he works in an office managing different projects.
Mm-hmm.
He mentions that he unwinds by listening to music and reading. Then Saffron, on the other hand, shares that she's from Chicago, Illinois, she's a university student, and she relaxes by reading books and watching movies.
What's really crucial when you read that full exchange in the source is that it isn't just one person delivering a 5-step monologue.
Right, it's not a speech.
Saffron says she's from Chicago, and Zayne naturally follows up with, what about you? Are you studying or working? It's a volley.
A back and forth.
Yeah. They use phrases like, what about you? To keep the momentum going. And I know asking a return question sounds like the most basic element of human conversation, but when your brain is overloaded with translating vocabulary, it is so easy to forget to pass the ball back.
That is a critical observation. The cognitive load we discussed earlier often makes language learners incredibly self-focused.
Because you're just surviving.
Right. You are so worried about your own output that you forget to employ active listening. Notice how seamlessly Zayne and Saffron integrate the steps.
Yeah.
When Zayne mentions he listens to music and reads to unwind, he is actively finding the overlapping Venn diagram of interest with Saffron's hobbies.
Building that bridge.
Yes. And then Zayne asks the golden question, by the way, why are you learning English?
And that's where Saffron drops in step 5. She says, I'm learning English because I want to speak confidently and communicate better with people.
Oh, great answer.
And Zane responds incredibly naturally, encouraging her.
Yeah.
He says, that's a great goal, and honestly, you're already doing well.
Which is such a nice validation.
It is,
Yeah.
which leads directly into a really fascinating piece of final advice the text gives. Zane tells Saffron, and by extension, the source is telling you, the listener, to speak slowly, stay relaxed, and don't worry about mistakes because they are part of learning.
It's the ultimate concluding thought of the framework.
But I want to really dig into this because it is so easy for an instructional text to just print the words, stay relaxed.
Oh, sure. Easier said than done.
Right. But in the reality of the moment, when you use the wrong verb tense or you completely butcher the pronunciation of a word, how does a listener actually accept those mistakes?
That's the big fear.
Because the visceral feeling is that the native speaker is secretly judging your intelligence. Does this advice actually hold up in the real world?
It absolutely holds up, and it's vital to understand why. We so often project our own harsh internal critic onto the person we are speaking with.
We assume they're as mean to us as we are to ourselves.
Exactly. We assume they hear a single dropped syllable and instantly write us off as incompetent. But the source is pushing a different, much more realistic perspective. It treats mistakes not as a failure of the system, but as an essential feature of the learning process.
You mean they literally expect you to mess up?
They do, especially once you've utilized step 5 and shared that you are a learner.
Oh, right. You've already primed them.
Exactly. When Zane tells Saffron not to worry about mistakes, he is reflecting the genuine reality of most native speakers. When someone is authentically trying to communicate and connect, native speakers rarely care about grammatical perfection.
They really don't.
They care about meaning. They are trying to understand your intent, not grade your syntax.
They just want to know what you're trying to communicate. They aren't holding a red pen in their mind.
Exactly. The ultimate takeaway from this source text is that consistency and connection triumph over perfection every single time.
Consistency over perfection.
As the text concludes, the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. The goal of this framework isn't to guarantee you never make a mistake. The goal is to give you a structure so that when you do make a mistake, you can recover gracefully and keep the conversation flowing.
Yeah.
That is the only way these 5 steps transition from feeling like a memorized script into becoming a natural muscle memory reflex.
It's a completely liberating way to look at language learning.
Yeah.
Okay, let's distill all of this down to the core insights.
Let's do it.
What we've uncovered from this Her Vox Studio text is that an effective, memorable introduction doesn't require a massive vocabulary.
Nope.
It doesn't require flawless, complex grammar. It requires a simple, straightforward 5-step progression to manage your cognitive load. You start with your name. You add your origin. You state your occupation. You bring in the vibrant color with your hobbies to create a conversational bridge. And finally, you share your goal to create a vulnerable, authentic connection.
And crucially, you execute all of this using short, manageable sentences, deliberately avoiding the trap of overcomplication.
Keep it simple.
And carrying the bravery to accept that mistakes are just a natural part of the learning curve.
Yes, that permission to be imperfect. For you listening right now, whether you are actively learning English, whether you are prepping for a high-stakes networking meeting in a foreign country, or if you are just trying to navigate a brand new social circle in your own hometown, the objective is always human connection.
Always.
It is never about passing a grammar test or delivering a flawless theatrical performance. People connect with real people, not with perfectly translated data points.
It's entirely about letting the other person see that you are human, that you have unique interests, and that you are striving towards something meaningful.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We've spent this deep dive looking at how sharing our goal, openly and honestly admitting that we are actively learning a new skill, makes an introduction so much more human, warm, and complete.
It really does.
It completely disarms the other person and builds an instant bridge of empathy. So I want you to think about the rest of your life. What other areas of your life, your interpersonal relationships, or your career could benefit from simply admitting you are in the process of learning, rather than constantly pretending you are already perfect?